This is CNN.
I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington. Coming up at the top of the hour, America's new war, the military options. When President Bush addresses Congress and the American public in 1 hour, he'll have one audience especially in mind, the young men and women of the armed forces who are about to head off into battle. We'll assess what awaits them. Also, we're standing by for comments from President Bush and British Prime Minister Tony Blair. But now back to Bill Press and Tucker Carlson.
Thanks, Wolf. Our final minutes here at the George Washington University in Washington. Final couple questions for our senators. This is Zach, senators from Minneapolis.
Senators, how is the U.S. government planning to ensure the American people that our economy and money are both safe, the way Alan Greenspan iterated today?
By telling you not to be afraid. By telling you don't bring these guys, make them more than they are. We're talking maybe about 1,000 people in the world. Tell you that we should fly. Tell you that your likelihood of being struck by a terrorist attack is about as likely as you win in the lottery and or being struck by lightning. Keep this in focus. Get back to life. Remember those who died. Be resolved in keeping the time and energy we need to go after these guys, but get back to your life. Spend your money. Get on a plane.
Senator Thompson, we saved this last question especially for you. David is from Memphis.
All right.
Know that city?
I was there
Senator
a few days ago, David.
Okay, great.
Everybody's great.
I was wondering, what do you think will have to happen for the American people to be satisfied that we've won this war against terrorism?
I think that it gets back to the question the young lady asked a little bit earlier. How can we tell when we have won? I think we'll know. I think we'll know. I think that there will come a time when we're much less vulnerable than we are now. There will come a time when the Taliban and related groups like that are substantially diminished, that do not approve the threat that they are today. And that we will know that in many different ways. We're a free society. We can't keep the secrets that we ought to keep, much less the ones that we should not keep. And we will know what is going on. Maybe not on a day-to-day basis. We don't need to know the tactics. We don't need to know it every day. We need to protect our troops while they're out in the field. But I think that we'll know, and it'll be a safer world, and we'll feel it.
You'll see bank accounts seized. You'll see heads of state in other places announcing the arrest and the trial of people that are residing in their countries. You will see a lot of things that will demonstrate to you that there's progress. There's progress being made. But it's going to take a while.
But, Senator, as long as there's a country like Iraq working on a nuclear weapons program, if in fact it is, isn't that by definition making the world unsafe?
Well, sure. Now, the question was, when are we going to make the world safe? The question was, are we going to be able to deal with international terrorist organizations in the way that you have some confidence that they're not likely to take down more buildings in this country, for example? Not whether or not the world's going to be safe. The world's not going to be safe in long as you have Russia supplying Iran with missile technology, that Iraq is trying to get chemical weapons, that we failed to corral all the chemical weapons the Soviets or the former Soviets are willing to let us corral with them, which cost about $11 billion. There's a lot we can do. I'm not promising to make this world safe forever for you. I wish I could. If I were, I'd be in a different job. But this is different.
We wish you could, too.
Yeah, we'd love to see that.
But it was great to have you here. Thank you both.
Thank you. I noticed your...
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Thompson. Thank you, Senator Biden. Thank you both. Thanks to our studio audience. And we'll be back tomorrow night for another edition of Crossfire Town Meeting here at George Washington University. President Bush will be addressing the nation at 9 o'clock Eastern. Now to Wolf Blitzer Reports here on CNN. Tucker Carlson and I back tomorrow night.
Tonight on Wolf Blitzer Reports, military options. 1 hour from now, President Bush will address Congress and the nation and lay out the case for a long war against terrorism. With Afghanistan's clerics threatening a holy war if the U.S. attacks, we'll go live to Islamabad, the White House, and Capitol Hill. We'll also go live to the Pentagon, where more deployments have been ordered and where they're searching for a new vocabulary to define this campaign.
Something that is very, very different from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War, Kosovo, Bosnia.
We'll take you live to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where a Marine unit has just shipped out. With Special Operations Forces likely to play a key role, I'll speak live with retired General Dave Grange, who served with the Rangers, Green Berets, and Delta Force. And CNN's Bill Schneider will examine America's tolerance for war and for casualties as America weighs its military options. Good evening, I'm Wolf Blitzer reporting tonight from Washington. Let's look first at some of the day's major developments. Afghanistan's Islamic clerics say the ruling Taliban should ask suspected terrorist mastermind Osama bin Laden to leave the country. But they're also warning the United States to stay out of Afghanistan. President Bush has been preparing for tonight's speech, which will include what's described as a very direct message to the Taliban. He'll discuss the terror threat and his decision to deploy military forces. In the audience tonight, 40 senators who earlier got a close look at the devastation in New York, where Mayor Rudy Giuliani today put the number of missing and presumed dead in the Twin Towers attack at 6,333. In addition, there are 241 confirmed deaths. The president today continued his coalition-building efforts, even as he got ready to build a public case for a tough response to terrorism. Let's go live to CNN senior White House correspondent John King. At this moment, John, the president's wrapping up a meeting with the British Prime Minister Tony Blair. I take it there are no problems the U.S. has with the British reaction.
None at all, Wolf. The Brits are the most staunch ally of the United States. That's symbolically isolated, if you will, tonight by a working dinner. The President of the United States, 1 hour away from a joint address to Congress and the American people, having dinner with the British Prime Minister, who has pledged military assets to this campaign if necessary. And to further the symbolism, Mr. Blair will sit in the President's box tonight up on Capitol Hill. Wolf?
A little preview. I know that the White House has released some excerpts. What the president's thrust of his speech is going to be.
The thrust of the speech tonight, Wolf, and excuse all the noise, they're getting the president's motorcade here ready near the White House. A direct message to the Taliban that its offer today is not good enough. A direct message to the American people that they need to prepare for a long and sustained campaign against terrorism, and a direct message to other governments around the world. The president says very bluntly in his prepared remarks, you're either with us or you are with the terrorists. The president urges the United States military to get ready. He also says the American people need to be calm, but also to show resolve.
And what was the reaction, John, at the White House to the Taliban, the ruling clerics' decision in Afghanistan today to ask the Taliban to in turn ask Osama bin Laden to leave, but not demand it?
Wolf, the White House says that's not good enough. They say they view it as an effort to delay and to posture, and they say it was the terrorists who set the timetable for the attack on the United States, and that the president will make clear he will set the timetable for the response. And if Osama bin Laden is to be turned over, we're told the president tonight will say that should happen very, very soon, because, as he will note, the military buildup continuing.
John King at the White House, once again, thank you very much. And Pakistani officials this week asked Afghanistan's ruling Taliban to turn over Osama bin Laden or face U.S. retaliation. Afghanistan's clerics have now asked the Taliban to let bin Laden leave peacefully, but have warned of a holy war if the U.S. intervenes. Meantime, Pakistan's government faces widespread protests for its U.S. support of the United States. To help us sort all of this out, let's go live to CNN's Christian Amanpour in Islamabad, Pakistan. Christian, first of all, try to sort out for us what the Pakistani reaction to this decision from the clerics in Afghanistan is.
Well, in short, the Pakistanis are not surprised. When they sent their high-level delegation over to Afghanistan, they came back essentially empty-handed. They had sent a very forceful message from the president here to say that the Taliban now had to do what the world expected of them or face the consequences, and they basically got no answer other than to say, we'll deal with it in our religious meeting sometime soon.
Christian, does the Pakistani government believe that Osama bin Laden will voluntarily leave Afghanistan?
No, they do not. No officials that I've spoke to believe that at all. They also don't believe that the Taliban is even ready to hand him over. I mean, it's one thing to say they should ask him to leave, and another thing to actually physically hand him over or enact any mechanisms that would transfer him to another country. And of course, where would Osama bin Laden go? He is not welcome in any country on the planet. Afghanistan was the last really safe haven.
And finally, Christian, how much opposition has been visible on the streets of Islamabad and elsewhere in Pakistan to the decision by President Musharraf to, in effect, go along with the U.S. request to cooperate in trying to remove Osama bin Laden from Afghanistan?
Well, we've done our own informal polls. We've been reading the newspapers. We've done as much surveying of public opinion as we possibly can. And to a great extent, the people believe that the president here made his case when he tried to rally the nation the night.
Well, we obviously have lost Christian with a technical problem. We'll try to fix that, but thanks to Christian. But let's move on now to the Pentagon. U.S. forces have begun moving out, preparing for possible action in the campaign against terrorism, campaign which has yet to be defined. Let's turn first of all to CNN military affairs correspondent Jamie McIntyre. He's live at the Pentagon. Tell us about today's announcements, decisions on deployments, Jamie.
Well, the deployment orders that went out yesterday have just begun to get the U.S. military machine in high gear. It will take weeks for a buildup to continue as the U.S. redeploys its forces. Pentagon sources say almost 100 planes altogether will be repositioned at places around the world. The locations undisclosed. Among those, B-52 bombers based in Barksdale, Louisiana, will be moving to an island in the Indian Ocean to be within striking distance of targets in Afghanistan if the president decides that. Other bombers, including the B-1 bomber, will be moved to bases in the Persian Gulf. In addition, Army Secretary Tom White said that U.S. Army ground troops are also getting deployment orders as well, but again, no details on the specific units or their specific missions. Simply, as Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld said, repositioning forces to give President Bush all the options he needs. And Secretary Rumsfeld today again cautioned people not to think of this as another Persian Gulf War.
If I could do anything today, I'd like to disabuse people of trying to draw parallels between previous conflicts and this one. I think it's not useful, and I think it'll prove to be in a direction that is not helpful and not going to prove to be a correct one.
Meanwhile, the Pentagon did today announce about 5,000 of that 35,000 call-up of National Guard and Reserve troops, most of these pilots and air crews to support the so-called Homeland Defense mission, U.S. fighter planes flying missions over the United States, and most of the troops called up today are to support that mission. Wolf?
Jamie, tell our viewers who may just be tuning in why Operation Infinite Justice, as it was branded yesterday, is no longer going to be called that.
Well, as you recall, Wolf, we always said that that name never got final approval from the White House. It was a working name, Infinite Justice, and now because several Muslim groups have complained that that name is insensitive to law-abiding Muslims around the world because they believe that only Allah can give infinite or ultimate justice. The U.S. is considering changing the name of the operation, which they say was never finalized anyway. New name has not yet been disclosed.
Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon, thank you very much. And now we want to go to Capitol Hill, where members of Congress are gathering for the president's speech. CNN congressional correspondent Jonathan Karl is live on Capitol Hill with more. Give us a sense of the anticipation up there, John.
Well, one key area here, Wolf, is going to be the question of national defense. Obviously, there's the question of what's going to be done in response to these attacks, but members are also wondering, members of Congress, what will be done to ensure or to take steps to minimize the possibility of future terrorist attacks. And one thing that CNN's John King has reported earlier is that the president will talk about a new cabinet-level position for what he is calling Homeland Defense to coordinate the various efforts to fight against a future attack. Various law enforcement agencies, Coast Guard, U.S. Customs, also airport security. That will have a very receptive audience here on Capitol Hill. As a matter of fact, Wolf, Senator Joe Lieberman has already put forward a proposal on this, and we'll have hearings tomorrow on the very question of what he is calling a Homeland Defense Agency. This is a phrase we barely heard before these attacks, but now the question of Homeland Defense is something that senators up here will very much want to hear more about.
Jonathan Karl, thank you very much, and we'll be joining you later as this evening continues. But up next, an inside look at the military special forces. We'll talk with a retired Army general about what role elite units might play in America's war on terrorism. Meanwhile, we have a live picture right now of the White House. President Bush, as you know, has been meeting with the British Prime Minister Tony Blair. We see Secretary of State Colin Powell standing by for the President and the Prime Minister to emerge. They will be making remarks, brief remarks, as both prepare to drive from one end of Pennsylvania to the other end of Pennsylvania for the President's address to Congress. Prime Minister Blair will be sitting, by the way, right next to Laura Bush, the First Lady, in the gallery. On the other side of Mrs. Bush will be Mayor Giuliani, and right next to Mayor Giuliani, Governor Pataki of New York. The President and the First Lady have also invited other leaders, distinguished leaders, to join them, including religious leaders. There will be a Rabbi President, Joshua Haberman, from here in Washington. There will be Cardinal, His Eminence Edward Cardinal Egan, the Archbishop of New York, will be attending. And also Imam Hamza Hansen, a Muslim religious leader, has been invited as well, pointedly to make a statement by the Bush administration that any U.S.-led military strike is not a strike designed to go after Islam. It is a strike designed to go after terrorists. Once again, Secretary of State Colin Powell standing just at the White House awaiting the arrival of President Bush and Prime Minister Tony Blair, who will be making very brief statements. By the way, in addition to the political leaders, the religious leaders, the President and the First Lady have also invited a delegation of New York City firefighters, New York City police officers, representatives from the Port Authority in New York, as well as military officers to sit in the gallery as well. For example, Petty Officer Whitemarsh of the U.S. Navy will be in the gallery. Here are the two leaders.
It's my honor to welcome my friend and a friend to America, Prime Minister Tony Blair, to the White House. I appreciate him coming to America in our time of need. One of the first phone calls I got after that terrible day was from the Prime Minister. He was reassuring to me. He showed to be a true friend, and I appreciate that. I'm so honored you're here, and I look forward to giving a speech tonight. The Prime Minister has kindly agreed to come and listen to it. So I'm not going to answer any questions tonight. I'm going to let my speech be exactly what I want to say. In the meantime, the Prime Minister's agreed to say a few comments, and then take a couple of questions from you.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my honor to be here, and also to pay tribute to your leadership at this immensely difficult time. I was in New York earlier today, and it's perhaps only when you are actually there that the full enormity and horror of what happened comes home to you. And I said then I would like to repeat that my father's generation went through the experience of the Second World War when Britain was under attack during the days of the Blitz. And there was one nation and one people that, above all, stood side by side with us at that time. And that nation was America, and those people were the American people. And I say to you, we stand side by side with you now, without hesitation. This is a struggle that concerns us all, the whole of the democratic and civilized and free world. And we have to do two things very clearly. We have to bring to account those responsible, and then we have to set about at every single level, in every way that we can, dismantling the apparatus of terror and eradicating the evil of mass terrorism in our world. And I know that America and Britain and all our allies will stand united together in that task. And I give you, on behalf of our country, our solidarity, our sympathy, and our support.
Thank you, sir.
How do you discuss what Britain's involvement in the military action like this?
Well, of course, we've discussed the full range of issues. Now is not the moment to go into the details of whatever response we make. But I think that you can be in no doubt at all of our determination to act, to make sure, as I say, that those responsible for this event are brought to account. And in the talks I had in Europe before I left, I believe that sense of solidarity is echoed right round the world.
Prime Minister, how long are you prepared to go on supporting a full-scale war on terrorism?
I believe we have to go on fighting terrorism as long as it takes. Because what happened on the 11th of September was, of course, a brutal and horrific attack on America. But it was a demonstration of what these people are capable of in any part of the world. And the important thing to realize is that there is no limit on what they would do that is moral. They have no regard for the sanctity of human life. They don't share the values of democracy or freedom or justice. The only limits on what they do are practical or technical. And that is why it is our duty, I believe this, it is our duty to take action to make sure that at every level we can, how these groups are financed, how they operate, how they move about, the weapons that they acquire at every single level, we have to take the action necessary to put an end to it.
The President says tonight that countries have to choose between being with you or being with the terrorists. How many countries do you believe are making the choice of being with terrorists? And what are the consequences for countries still not sure which side they're on?
Well, I just want to say this to you in conclusion to that question. I believe right round the world there is support for firm action now. And I believe the coalition of support for that action is growing. It is strengthening. It is not diminishing. And that is the impression that I've had from many of the conversations I've had with world leaders in all different parts of the world. Because this struggle is something that should unite people of all faiths, of all nations, of all democratic political persuasions. And I believe it will. Thank you.
We got to go. Thank you all.
British Prime Minister Tony Blair and President Bush heading over now inside the White House, but they'll be heading over to Capitol Hill shortly for the President's address to Congress. Our senior White House correspondent John King joins us once again. John, when you were listening to Tony Blair, there didn't seem to be even a speck of difference between the Bush administration and the British government.
Our support without hesitation, the Prime Minister said, and we are told by sources that includes military support if the United States requests it in any response that President Bush might contemplate and order. And Wolf, if there is one good to come of this, U.S. officials, including the President, say that once leaders get a look at the horror, the Prime Minister has been there, the French President was there a day previously, they believe they have finally perhaps built the political will around the world to wage a real war on terrorism. And for his part, we should say the President tonight, as part of that, will announce a new cabinet-level agency for what he calls Homeland Security. That will coordinate the role of so many federal agencies, also reach out to state and local governments to fight terrorism. Mr. Bush promising to do his part. Very encouraged by the support he has received from the British Prime Minister, and as a show of solidarity after their dinner tonight and after those remarks, Mr. Blair will travel to Capitol Hill, sit in the First Lady's box, listen to the President's speech. Wolf?
John King once again at the White House. Stand by. You'll be with us throughout the evening. A lot of our viewers, of course, will remember 11 years ago, August 1990, when the then British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher came to the United States and in effect bucked up then President George Bush in the aftermath of the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. We'll be right back with CNN's political analyst Bill Schneider. Stay with us.
Wolf Blitzer Reports is brought to you by America Online. So easy to use, no wonder it's number one. There's never been a better time to get online.
When you travel on business, don't downsize. Amerisize at AmeriSuites. Need more room to spread out? Get more workspace and features like high-speed internet access, plus more space to unwind in a comfortable suite for the price of an ordinary hotel room. And when it comes to breakfast, don't downsize. Amerisize. Get AmeriSuites' free Bountiful Breakfast Buffet every morning. Next time, check into AmeriSuites. Don't downsize. Amerisize.
We have got to cut costs, people. Ideas.
We could open an account on FedEx.com, save 10% on online express shipping.
Okay, how about this? We open an account on FedEx.com, we save 10% on online express shipping.
That is wonderful. You just said the same thing I said, only you did this.
No, I did this.
Makes all the difference.
Bingo.
That's good.
Right on the nose.
That's a great idea.
We can expect in the coming months is Director of Product Development, Paul Noon.
High speech. Got it.
Nortel Networks is...
These men turn into trained killers. Greta Van Susteren gets to the point. Tonight, 8:30 Eastern.
Welcome back. The Secretary of the Army today stressed Special Operations Forces will play a prominent role in the anti-terror campaign. To help us learn more about these forces, I'm joined now by retired Army Brigadier General Dave Grange. He's in Oak Brook, Illinois. He was a Ranger, a Green Beret, and a member of the Army's counter-terrorist unit. Later commanded the famed 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red Run. General Grange, thanks for joining us. Are these Special Forces units prepared for what awaits them potentially in Afghanistan?
All these forces are prepared very well, both Navy, Army, Air Force, Marines, Special Operations Forces. They rehearse for these kind of missions continuously. They're very well resourced. They're great soldiers, sailors, Marines, and they're ready to go.
Will this be, in your opinion, based on what you know, a largely U.S. and perhaps British-assisted operation, or will there be other nations who will militarily get involved on the ground in this operation?
Well, my evaluation of the situation would be that we'll do this if a coalition of special operating forces. Some of our allies have very good ones, especially Great Britain. And we'll do that along with, I think, also conventional forces, which will be required to do it properly.
Has the U.S. trained in the past with other nations in special operations forces?
We train for military allies all the time, and that gives us a lot of the synergy we need to accomplish these kind of tasks.
A lot of our viewers, of course, remember the disaster that awaited the Soviet Union in Afghanistan some 10 years ago. They were well trained, they were prepared, they weren't up to it. What makes you think U.S. and British and other coalition forces will have any better experience in the terrain of Afghanistan?
Well, first of all, I think it's a different type of mission. I've trained with Russian paratroopers and their special ops forces. They're very good. But they went and occupied the country for an extended period of time. I believe our forces, special ops forces, will be going in on raids, interdiction, to destroy camps, kill or capture these terrorist leaders.
You know, I want to show our viewers and you some of the images of a disaster that included that took place in Somalia a few years back. That was in 1993 when Special Operations Forces went in there. Viewers who look at those pictures, who remember Desert One, 1980, the ill-fated U.S. hostage rescue operation in Iran, they don't want to see these kinds of images again. How concerned should the American public be?
Well, just keep in mind, a lot of these images, especially here that you're showing in Somalia, was a tough operation, obviously, and caused us to withdraw. But there's more operations that were successful than some of these that are shown on television right now. So they should be concerned, but however, the forces are trained well. I'm fully confident that they'll be successful. They just need to be resourced, and we have to go to distance to get it to accomplish these missions. We have to go the distance.
General Colin Powell, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he had the Powell Doctrine and said there must be a defined mission that uses overwhelming force. Do you envisage that will be the case this time?
I envision overwhelming force. There's no doubt that we'll resource both not only the hardware required to accomplish this mission, but the intangible requirements of the morale, the spirit to win,
I think we're going to do that this time. No doubt in my mind. I feel so comfortable I'd go myself. They're going to do well.
General Grange, they might be bringing you back out of retirement. You never know. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll be right back.
You are no longer soldiers. Each one of you is nothing.
Perhaps as many as a couple.
Bringing you the latest reports as events unfold in America's new war. Stay with CNN.
Do you need to learn
for President Bush's address to Congress at 9? That's all tonight, beginning at 8 Eastern, only on CNN.
That's all the time we have. Please stay with CNN throughout the evening. CNN will have live coverage of the president's address beginning about a half an hour from now. Jeff Greenfield and I will be back at 11 p.m. tonight. I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington. The Point with Greta Van Susteren begins right now.
The Point, tracking the terrorists. Another arrest, this one in Chicago.
Nabil Al-Marab is also listed on the FBI's watch list compiled last week following the terrorist attacks in New York and Washington.
And new questions arise. Is there a link between Osama bin Laden and Iraq's Saddam Hussein? Correspondent Sheila McVicker explores the possible Iraqi connection. Also, a chilling videotape, which provides a frightening glimpse of bin Laden and his recruits.
On the tape, bin Laden suggests that if you are a committed Muslim, that you should come and fight. In fact, that God will not forgive you if you don't.
Training for a holy war. And the personal trainer who taught a hijacker how to street fight.
Some of the things that I taught him, it's like, it's a shame that someone would have that mentality.
The Point, tracking the terrorists. Now from Washington, Greta Van Susteren.
Good evening. Andrea Capo is standing by at the State Department with some breaking news. Andrea?
Greta, I just got off the phone with a senior State Department official who pretty much laid out for me the way that Secretary Powell is thinking in terms of the way that this operation would work. And one thing that he stressed is that we keep talking about this as a war. And in fact, he said that, the administration is as guilty as anyone for using that term, but it's going to be much more of a campaign. Even though we've been seeing pictures of sailors and others going off to the Persian Gulf and preparing for what will certainly be some sort of military strikes, most of this campaign, Greta, is going to be financial, it's going to be diplomatic, it's going to be legal. This is going to be a very slow, methodical campaign and not something that's going to be a bunch of quick hits. And the reason for that is that the administration is concerned that if they were to have too much emphasis on the military side of things, that what you would end up having is a holy war, because many within the Islamic world, many within the Muslim world, would see this as the U.S. beating up on Islam. And that is why you have seen the kind of diplomacy going on in this building and over at the White House, especially in the last day or two, with the Saudi foreign minister in town trying to get that message out. The message being that this is not a war against Islam, it's a war against terrorism. And so, if you will, Greta, this is something that we need to get across, that this is going to be a very different kind of a campaign from anything we've seen before.
All right, Andrea Capo, thank you very much from the State Department. Another man on the government's watch list is in custody. Nabil Al-Marab is believed to have ties with two of the alleged hijackers and to Osama bin Laden. He also has a license to drive big trucks and haul hazardous cargo. The FBI looked for him in Detroit this week, but found him and arrested him near Chicago. We will have more on him in just a minute. There are roughly 190 names on the FBI's watch list. They are people who may have information about the September 11th attacks or links to the hijackers. In addition, at least 125 people are in government custody. Most are being detained by the Immigration and Naturalization Service. And while federal agents are rounding up people believed to have links to Osama bin Laden, there are disturbing questions about whether bin Laden has a link to an old U.S. nemesis, Iraq. CNN's Sheila McVicker joins me from London. Sheila, is there any evidence of a connection between Osama bin Laden and Iraq and Saddam Hussein?
There is a very old connection between Osama bin Laden and Iraq, a connection that goes back to the years just after the Gulf War, the early 1990s. We know that at that time Osama bin Laden was living in Khartoum in the Sudan. There were difficulties. He was being forced to leave. And there was sort of a channel then opened to him by the then Iraqi ambassador in Sudan, a kind of dialogue that went on back and forth over a period of time, and a dialogue which increased or stepped up, if you will, in the immediate aftermath of the bombings in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. Those are bombings, of course, Greta, that you will know that the United States government has laid squarely at the feet of Osama bin Laden. In those days, there was tremendous pressure, as there is now, on the Taliban to give up bin Laden. There were a lot of contacts. A number of American diplomats and statesmen went back and forth to Afghanistan, and there was a view that perhaps in exchange for recognition of their regime, perhaps, plus other things, the Taliban might at that stage be willing to give him up. That was where the contacts between Iraq and Mr. bin Laden increased and went up, sort of were ratcheted up, if you will. There were very senior contacts made. It's not entirely clear, and I don't think it's ever been entirely clear exactly what the nature of those contacts are. At some point, we believe that Iraq had suggested, and this was a number of years ago, that perhaps if he was forced to leave Afghanistan, he could go to Iraq. There's no suggestion now that that offer remains on the table. But it is also not clear what other kinds of things, including cooperation, they might have discussed. It is clear that from the point of view of Iraq, they do share certain common interests. It has to be said, however, that Iraq's government has been very clear and has repeatedly said that they have had nothing to do with what happened in New York and Washington last week. Greta?
Sheila, is there any evidence, though, in spite of the denials, but any state involvement of Iraq, actual involvement in this terrorism?
Well, we know American officials have said that Mohammed Atta, or the man we know as Mohammed Atta, one of the key hijackers, met with an Iraqi intelligence official in Central Europe sometime last spring. We believe that he was identified by the Central European Intelligence Agency involved, and in the wake of the bombings in New York and Washington, the government in the United States was informed of that. We don't know what the nature of that contact was. We don't know why that meeting took place. We don't know what was discussed. We don't know why Mr. Atta would have gone to meet with an Iraqi intelligence agent or why the intelligence agent would have met with him. And that is a very, very big question. A number of people, in looking at the events that took place, have said they have real questions about whether or not an organization such as that, which is run or headed by Mr. bin Laden, would have been capable alone of carrying out what happened last week. This was, I think we all agree, something that was pretty sophisticated. We're finding out just how sophisticated it was, how many people were involved, the level of false documentation, false identities, the kinds of money, travel, all those things. And people are beginning to ask in a number of places whether or not it was an organization alone that could have carried this out, or whether perhaps they required some logistic help from somewhere else, like a state.
All right. My thanks tonight to Sheila McVicker from London. Several months ago, a videotape of Osama bin Laden surfaced. The video sheds light on bin Laden's training techniques, his network of followers, and ominously on attacks planned against the United States. CNN national correspondent Mike Betcher gives us a look.
The images are chilling. Masked followers of Osama bin Laden training in eastern Afghanistan to fight a jihad, a holy war. The message is clear. A call to arms spelling out impending attacks against the United States. It is a recruiting and training video made by bin Laden's followers that foreshadowed the devastating attack on the World Trade Center.
This tape falls in part of a pattern of bin Laden subtly insinuating some kind of future action.
The skillfully edited 2-hour tape first surfaced in Kuwait this June. It began circulating around the Middle East and showed up on internet sites.
The tape demonstrates that bin Laden is hardly an enemy of Western technology in the sense that he's using the internet to distribute it, or at least his followers are.
Osama bin Laden himself appears shooting off rounds from an automatic weapon. He uses the videotape to enlist new recruits in his self-declared war against the United States. It is a masterful appeal to the Muslim fundamentalist mindset.
The love of this world is wrong. You should love the other world. And you should not be afraid to die, because to die in the right cause and go to the other world, that's praiseworthy. If you are pious, if you are observant, if you're a true Muslim, you will join him in this jihad.
Among his recruits, dozens of young boys. The tape shows a new generation of holy warriors, most of whom appear as young as 10 or 11, going through some of the same vigorous training as the adults.
Children are very vulnerable to military recruitment, and they are easily manipulated. They're often also very gullible. They believe what they're told. They can't yet distinguish, in many cases, right from wrong. And the sorry fact is that there are military leaders that exploit this kind of vulnerability that children have.
Bin Laden rallies his recruits with impassioned speeches in the videotape about atrocities against Muslims around the world. In the tape, he also makes his most explicit references to date about the role of his network, Al-Qaeda, in attacking U.S. interests. It is a litany of past attacks. 1993, Somalia, 18 Americans killed. 1998, the attacks on the U.S. embassies in Tanzania and Kenya, more than 200 killed. The suicide bombing of the USS Cole in Yemen last year, 17 U.S. sailors killed. The videotape also indicates Al-Qaeda is planning more attacks on the U.S. It's apparently part of a pattern by bin Laden to signal a plot is in the works.
Before the U.S. embassy bombings in Africa, he held a press conference 9 weeks before those bombings, and he talked about good news in coming weeks. 9 weeks later, the embassy bombs happened.
Then, a few months before the attack on the USS Cole in Yemen last October, bin Laden appeared in a videotape wearing a dagger typical of Yemen, which he had never worn before. The tape also includes a call for actions in Yemen. In this last videotape, bin Laden boasts that the victory of Yemen will continue, hinting at a plan for more strikes at U.S. targets. It prompted U.S. intelligence to issue warnings about possible attacks against U.S. interests in the Middle East.
Unfortunately, the U.S. government, and indeed the rest of the world, didn't understand that the tape might indicate actual attacks in America.
Now they wish they had. Mike Betcher, CNN, Atlanta.
You're going to now look at live pictures inside the House chamber where the President of the United States is going to address members of Congress in about 18 minutes. Of course, CNN will carry that live. We heard from CNN terrorism analyst Peter Bergen in that last report. He joins me now here in Washington. Peter, you've had the unique, I don't know what to say, job to have actually met Osama bin Laden. What's your impression of him?
Well, my impression of him in that meeting, which was in 1997, was that he was filled with rage against the United States, but he was delivering this message in a very mild-mannered and polite kind of form. I mean, his words were full of rage, but his manner was quiet. Now, when you look at that videotape, which we saw just now in Mike Betcher's report, he's really enraged. He's a completely different man. He's enraged by the activities of the Israelis against the Palestinians. He's enraged against the United States. So it was kind of an interesting difference between 1997 and this year where this tape came out.
Does he follow the American media?
I think that he is quite well read. I mean, he doesn't have access to CNN in Afghanistan, obviously, because there's no electricity or television, but he is somebody who's quite well read on current affairs. And certainly, if you're looking at that videotape, it's clear that he's quite aware of events in Israel, let's say, or events in Chechnya. So yes, I think he's certainly up to speed on current affairs.
In the 30 seconds we have left, how did the world, this is obviously great hindsight, but how did the world underestimate the power of this video?
It was basically it was kind of an indicator that something was going to happen, but it wasn't clear what was going to happen.
But we had an indicator before the bombings in Africa, the embassies. He had a press conference and gave us sort of ominous report then that it would happen.
I think one of the hallmarks of the organization is to do the unexpected, whether it's attacking embassies in Africa or coming to the United States.
All right, my thanks, Peter Birkin, for joining us this evening. How would you feel if you had known one of the hijackers and, without knowing it, helped him? We will meet a gym owner who can tell us exactly how it feels when The Point continues.
I remember 20 years ago.
Members of Congress are gathering inside the House chamber to hear President Bush's speech at the top of the hour. Earlier, about 40 U.S. senators traveled to New York to get a first-hand look at the ruins of the World Trade Center. The president's speech to Congress begins at the top of the hour, and of course, CNN will provide live coverage. FBI agents were back at the Florida gym this week asking more questions about one of the alleged hijackers. The man was on the United Airlines Flight 93, which crashed in Pennsylvania. That was the jet where some of the passengers voted to attack the hijackers. If so, this hijacker was ready. He had taken lessons in street fighting at that Florida gym. His teacher, gym owner Bert Rodriguez, joins me from Miami. Bert, what did you teach this hijacker?
Basically, I taught him defensive and aggressive in close quarter tactics, things that we usually teach to corrections officers, agents, police officers, people that are going to be using this to control or get someone to cooperate as quickly as possible, you might say.
Did he give you any idea why he wanted to learn this?
Usually I interview and check with the people that I'm working with. Most of the people that I work with, like I said, are corrections officers or work in psychiatric wards, or they're police officers or agents. And I interviewed them, and sometimes I do train businessmen that travel. That he told me he was a student that was traveling, and he always was interested in martial arts, and he felt that if he ever needed to understand any kind of confrontation, this is what he wanted to do.
How good was he? Did he learn well?
Very well. He was in excellent shape. He learned quickly. He was diligent about what I taught him. I explained to him that this was like magic tricks. The more you practice them, the quicker we can continue on to learn more. He was very diligent. He was very a quiet person, very soft demeanor, very polite to the staff and to myself, very respectful. Nothing like what we stereotype in the movies or sometimes on some of your stations as what a terrorist looks like. He spoke with a German accent. He told me he was from Germany. Later I found out from the FBI that he'd been studying there since '92. And I look more Middle East than he does. Like I said, he was a light-skinned, fair-skinned gentleman with... I had no idea that his thoughts were going in this direction.
Looking back, was there anything peculiar or odd about him to you?
Looking back now, after hearing about the way that some of the other hijackers acted, I think that yes, there was a peculiarity to him in the sense that he was probably one of the only hijackers that had that much personal contact with someone outside, I would imagine, the supposed cell, because this wasn't one of my, we have over 10,000 members. It wasn't a member that I see using my equipment. These are people that I train directly, that I have direct hour to an hour and a half contact with for 2 or 3 times a week. And for a period of 3 or 4 months, we worked together. He was a very, like I said, he just seemed like the perfect person. I felt also, and I've spoken with a few people, including the agents, that I train, again, the military and professional boxers and champions, and you need a certain fire in you to commit certain acts or to compete at a certain level or to perform certain levels. And I think that he was more of a follower. Even though he trained here, he was also taking flying lessons, and I believe that I would have a tendency to say, from knowing his character, he was more probably one of the pilots. I just don't see him as someone that could aggressively or or any other way motivate himself to be that violent. He just, like I said, we had close quarter contact. I had combat contact with him, and I can tell.
Thank you. Let me just interrupt you there. Thank you to Bert Rodriguez, and we're going to go to John King at the White House. John?
Well, Greta, one of the big announcements in the president's speech tonight is he is creating a new cabinet-level agency called the Department of Homeland Security, this to coordinate the government's anti-terrorism efforts around this country and with other governments around the world. And CNN has learned that the person who will lead that department is the governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Ridge, a close friend of the president, a man who was considered when then Governor Bush was looking for a running mate in the year 2000. Obviously, joined the president's cabinet as the new director of Homeland Security. Greta?
Okay, thank you, John King. I'm Greta Van Susteren in Washington. Stay with CNN for live coverage of President Bush's speech to Congress, which is only minutes away.
Stay with us for the latest reports as the story develops in America's new war. This is CNN.
Discover the world of Yo-Yo Ma, America's favorite cellist, as he plays some of the most beautiful music ever composed on classic yo-yo. With 13 Grammy Awards, millions of albums sold, and appearances on national television, ranging from the Academy Awards to the West Wing, Yo-Yo Ma is one of the most recognizable names in music. Now, on Classic Yo-Yo, 16 of his greatest recordings are gathered on one essential album. Order now. Classic Yo-Yo features music from Bach, Brahms, Gershwin, the Oscar-winning film Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and much more. And 3 brand new tracks, including Simple Gifts with Alison Krauss. Yo-Yo Ma's greatest hits, collected on this remarkable album, Classic Yo-Yo. To order Classic Yo-Yo, call the number on your screen or send $18.98 for 1 CD plus $4.98 shipping and handling to the address shown. Call now.
What are you working on? I'm looking for something on the internet. What? Oh, nothing.
So tell me.
God.
Do you mind if I show you something?
The Holy Bible is a great place to begin to share with your children the role God plays in our lives. Just call this number or visit our website at freeholybible.com and we'll send you a free copy of the Holy Bible right to your door. There's no cost. It's a gift from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The Bible will help you teach your children about God and the peace that comes from knowing how to draw closer to Him. So please call or visit freeholybible.com for your copy of the Holy Bible.
This is CNN.
Now's the best time to join America Online.
Welcome. AOL is very easy to use.
Anyone can do it.
You've got mail.
I love AOL email.
Click and send. Everybody I know is on AOL.
I do feel good knowing that AOL has parental controls. I can get AOL anytime, anywhere.
And now with the all-new and improved AOL mobile communicator, you can send and receive email and instant messages without a computer. Every time I use AOL, I discover something new. Now's the perfect time to experience America Online. So easy to use, no wonder it's #1. Call 1-800-4ONLINE.
This is a CNN special report. The President's Address to Congress, live from Capitol Hill. Here's Aaron Brown and Judy Woodruff.
Good evening, everyone. In just a moment, the President will enter the House chamber to deliver a speech that was unimaginable just 2 weeks ago. But then so many things that have happened since 8:48 last Tuesday morning have been unimaginable.
The terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon have so shaken the United States that Mr. Bush faces a Congress with members of both political parties ready, even anxious, for him to succeed as a leader.
And just imagine this. In the United States tonight, in the capital city, security is so tight that the Vice President will not take his usual spot behind the President. He's somewhere else tonight, just in case.
Officials say that Mr. Bush will lay out for the American people the whys that a sustained fight against the nation's new worst enemy is needed, and in stark terms tell the rest of the world you are either with us or with the terrorists.
Down on the floor of the House, the Supreme Court of the United States is starting to make its way in. Virtually the entire American government will be in the hall tonight. Chief Justice Rehnquist, Sandra Day O'Connor behind him, Justice Scalia, the Chief Justice taking his seat for this historic moment.
Typically, of course, Aaron, the justices would attend a presidential address to the nation, but this is one we know they wouldn't want to miss.
And so now they take their seats as well as we watch people filing in. I wonder if we can get to our senior White House correspondent here, John King. John, can you give us a brief preview of what you expect from the president tonight?